Okay, so today I'm going to be doing a PVE build, not a PvP build. Now, this has been requested multiple times by a lot of different, subscribers and viewers, and there's specific reasons for why my gear looks like this, why there's a purple mod, etc. And I'll go over that and my guns shortly. But I just want you guys to know this is taking advantage of some alternate mechanics such as Robust. There's a lot of different mechanisms in here to make this a strong PvE only build. This does not translate into PvP. I wouldn't even recommend taking this into the Dark Zone. However, what it will do is provide a really, really solid base for completing incursions, for completing underground content, for being in the persistent world rather than the Dark Zone, and it has, really good results. So what I'm utilizing is the Robust chest piece with Savage gloves, with 2-piece Hunter's Faith for optimal range, but you could easily swap that out for 2-piece of anything else. 2-piece Alpha Bridge if you want to, 2-piece Predator's Mark. There's a lot of different combinations. I go with the Hunter's Faith just because I have good rolls, and then 2-piece Nomad. Now, the most critical component of the build is the 2-piece Nomad for the health on kill of 20%. That's like definitely the premise that it's based around. But outside of that, there's some other important things, which is getting health on kill. I'll talk about that in a second. And then for my guns, there's a couple key talents there. But we're going to start off with talking about the 2 pieces of Nomad. So on my mask, there's a couple different attributes that are going to be key for PvE specifically. The primary attribute is going to be damage to elites on your major attribute. That's what you're going to be looking for, because 9% damage to elites is going to be really, really potent in most PvE situations. I'm going to be doing a hard mode underground mission, so I'm not going to get my damage to elites most of the time, except for on a few key mobs and then on the boss. But then enemy armor damage as a minor attribute is definitely something that you want to pick up. Stacking all of these on top of each other wherever possible is going to mean that you're really powerful against NPCs. And there's even more room to do it than I have done so far. And with the new time to kill, it means that these kind of stat points are even more potent. But right now I've stacked enough of them to be able to demonstrate a really, really good result. So moving on to my knee pads, you have critical hit damage at 8%. I have 10% increased enemy armor damage. And because of the Robust chest piece that I'm using up here, I don't actually have to roll armor on the major attribute slot here. It definitely wouldn't hurt, and when they do transition from 60% to 70% mitigation, which is what I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, they're slated for doing, later during the PTS on Thursday, I believe, or even after that. But I think the final result of the game will be that 70% mitigation is the cap instead of 60%. My major attribute will be 8% critical hit damage here. I don't have to roll armor because of Robust, and if I do roll armor, then I'll easily meet the 70% critical mitigation cap later on. But the most important thing, though, is 10% enemy armor damage here, and then a high stamina roll for the knee pads. Moving on to the Hunter's Faith, I have armor on the backpack. It's definitely good to roll that. And then talking about why I specifically have an electronics mod here, it has 3% enemy armor damage as a secondary, and then 168 electronics. That's required to unlock one of my gun talents, and I'll go over that when I get to the gun. Moving on to my holster, armor is absolutely key to roll in the holster, and you want high 900s or low 1000 rolls on all three for it to be a typical, god roll or really well rolled holster. So now I'm going to talk about Robust. So what this does is, while in cover, it increases armor by 30%. That's huge, because all you have to do is take cover, you instantly have 30% more armor, and then from cover you can trade with NPCs and, progress through the content rather easily. Now, health on kill is very important as a major attribute to roll on here as well, and then the minor attribute doesn't entirely matter all that much, but health on kill is really good, and you're going to want that there. All the mods that I have, other than that one electronics mod, are armor. That's really important to roll as well, considering that they're raising the armor cap, and then high firearms. So I do have significant DPS, especially paired with all my different percentage bonus attributes, such as enemy armor damage, damage to elites, etc., etc. Now, the Savage gloves that I have a great roll on them. These are perfect for PvE purposes, not for PvP. The Savage talent will proc on most NPCs. Typically, they fight out of cover, and if you can catch them and stagger them out of cover, then you can get a ton of shots off. They have a good stamina roll, and then they have 6% health on kill, 8% damage to elites, and then 1066 assault rifle damage, which you can see here I've re-rolled. That's what these little arrows mean. They mean I've re-rolled the piece of gear to that specific attribute or that talent or whatever. This is really good. It's got both health on kill and damage to elites. Really happy that I checked that off. And then main weapon damage of the type that I'm going to be using. So now moving on to my weapons, I'm using this ACR. Now the reason I'm using an ACR, an assault rifle, rather than something like an SMG or an LMG is because of the built-in enemy armor damage. Now this is, in PvE, actually better than an LMG. As you can see, the LMGs have about 90% damage to targets out of cover. That's conditional. That means they have to be out of cover. Now, against NPCs, you have 18% damage to their armor bar, which, yes, is not their entire health bar. However, it is most of it, and it's active all the time on both purple and yellow NPCs. So using an assault rifle is really, really powerful. Then I've re-rolled for Predatory here, and the reason I have the 1 electronics mod is to tick off this 2324 requirement here, which allows me every time I kill a target to get 50% of my health bar over 20 seconds. That allows me to, without the 3-piece Nomad, pop through the health bar divides when I'm regenerating in cover while getting the 30% from Robust. So I'm stacking a whole bunch of different complementary attributes on top of each other in talents to create a build that means I move from cover to cover, kill a target, constantly regenerate, constantly get health from kills, with upwards of 30-something% health on kill. I'll show my stat sheet in a second. I have Vicious on here, which is really good, which means I'm going to be in my last health segment. My highest health segment almost all the time, which means 10% critical strike chance during that. Predatory helps to keep me there, and Responsive for when they do get closer is really nice with the 10% increased damage to them. And then paired with the Hunter's Faith means if they're farther away, I have increased optimal range, which means my damage doesn't fall off nearly as much. And then if they are close, I get Responsive to proc. So that's really good. As my secondary, I have this Paratrooper SVD. Vicious again, I'm always going to be at full health while in cover. But if I'm not at full health, then I get increased bonus damage because Unforgiving and Vicious are now very, very, very good together. They synergize extremely well. And then Disciplined, I didn't really roll it off. Your secondary is really up to you. It doesn't matter all that much. So now looking at my character sheet, I'm just going to go over a few things. I have a great base stamina pool. While I'm outside of cover, if we go down to survivability, you're going to see that I'm at 49.3% mitigation with 9,451. As soon as I enter cover here, let me go over here and enter cover. Boom. Now we're going to show you that I have significantly increased armor. If we go down to survivability, I now meet the 60% cap. I now actually well exceed the 60% cap and would be up into like 65 or so at least. If they did raise it to 70%, which I believe they will. So that's what Robust is doing for me, and since I'm going to transition from cover to cover and then kill NPCs, this helps a lot. My toughness has gone up. I'm significantly tanky. I have great DPS. Overall, it's really good. Now scrolling up, I'm going to go to combat, and you're going to see my 3 attributes. I have 17% bonus damage to elites, which is great. That's a flat 17% against any yellow enemy, especially bosses. I have 33% health on kill, which means every time I'm killing an enemy, I'm regenerating not only a flat 33%, but then also 50% of my health bar over 20 seconds. And then I have 21% enemy armor damage, which is a combination of my assault rifle at 18% and my 1 electronics mod at 3% enemy armor damage to activate Predatory. So these 3 stats are going to help me tremendously during the underground mission. So what I'm going to do in order to demonstrate this, actually I'll show you my skills and stuff really quickly. I have Pulse. This is the only time you should be using Tactical Scanner, is in strictly PvE content. Now the reason for this is if you look at the critical hit chance, it's 15.3, and critical hit damage is 24.2. Now look at Conceal. It's 15.3. It did not even gain any bonus critical hit chance, and it's 15.3. So all I've gained really is less than 10% critical hit damage, and that's the difference between completely covering me from enemy pulses and not covering me from enemy pulses, giving them the bonus increased critical chance and critical hit damage. And then gaining what? Maybe gaining, because they're probably using Conceal, but maybe gaining almost 10% critical hit damage. So everybody in any sort of PvP situation in the Dark Zone ever should be running Pulse with Conceal rather than Tactical Scanner and having 100% uptime with multiple group members on Scrambler. However, this is strictly PvE, so I will be using Tactical Scanner from a solo play perspective, and then Overdose for personal heal. You could use something like Booster Shot. Considering all the regen that you have, it's really not a factor to be fighting in your overheal constantly, especially in cover since you're more tanky because of Robust, but I'm going to be using Overdose, and it gets the job done. Now, talking about talents, I'm going to be using Tactical Advance. I need to get more used to this because this is a really, really great talent now. Moving from cover to cover, especially while keeping Robust procced, means that I get 2% every time per meter every time I transition cover, which means if I'm moving up in a hallway and underground, I can easily get almost 20% or over bonus weapon damage for 10 seconds, which is really powerful, especially paired with my other attributes, means I can melt really quickly. And then I have On the Move, which procs really fast now because of the decreased time to kill. That's awesome as well. One is None still does jam, although it's much less frequent. So you just got to be a little bit careful and then be aware of when it does jam. However, I do still like this talent with a fast RPM gun, you know, like the M4 or something like that, or an ACR even. It does work when I'm going for those headshots. The ACR is extremely stable and accurate, which means I can land them more often. And then I go for Strike Back, which means I can, you know, pulse and heal a lot quicker when I do actually get to low health. And this has saved my life quite a few times. You can definitely swap this out for something like Adrenaline if you really want to stay in your overheal bar. You can definitely swap it out for something like Tech Support if you're opting for, you know, Smart Cover instead of, you know, Pulse. But I'm going to be using Pulse to see where the enemies are, you know, more frequently. There's a lot of different things that you could run if you're in a group, maybe something like Triage or Combat Medic, but this is the 4 that I'm going to be running for my purposes right now. So Going through, I'll just show a little bit of gameplay on this hard mode underground. This does perform in challenging, but I thought I would demonstrate on hard to make sure that there's no shenanigans or, you know, my gun skill isn't, you know, inadequate, and as a result I couldn't get through the mission. So getting into cover here, my toughness goes up. Let's swap over to my main weapon, and we can start to deal tons of damage. I mean, super short time to kill, extremely short. I should have done a cover to cover move there, but as you can see, I can go back and forth, cover to cover, get increased damage, melt extremely fast, and now I'm regenerating my health bar. And while I'm regenerating my health bar, I can go through the blips, through the different health blips. I can just move over here. I should be doing cover to cover, again, in proccing tactical advance, but my gameplay style is still used to, like, pre 1.1 and 1.2 days, where you just never ever used anything like that. It's a different era in Division. But as you can see, all the different bonuses are pairing together nicely. I absolutely annihilate their health bar, and then move on to their regular their armor bar, and then move on to their regular health bar. So let's see, we got any enemies here? The build is really tanky, really survivable, has a lot of healing every time I kill an enemy. I'll try and demonstrate now. I'll actually let them take a portion of my health bar and then kill one and show you how it works. So I'm going to kill one of his lieutenants here. You're going to get to see that I do even more damage to elite enemies because of all my different attributes. It works very, very well. So let's let this guy shoot me. Alright, let's get in cover so I'm more tanky. Shoot me a couple more times. Boom, boom, boom. Now that he's done, you can see I get a large chunk of health, and then I start to regenerate constantly. And that regeneration will get me through the armor bar. And when I do finally need to heal, I get plenty of healing. If I do need to pop something like that, I can eat a grenade because I'm tanky enough on cover. I don't even have any EDR. That's because of my base health pool. I was able to eat that grenade, not because of any sort of EDR. If you spec in some EDR somewhere, it's very organic and easy to acquire, then you'll easily find that you're surviving grenades. You can just eat them all on cover, and you basically don't even feel anything. With a matter of like 1 or 2 kills, I'm back to full health, constantly regenerating. It's honestly a really, really great build. I found really good results from it. You can face tank if you really want to, but the true way that the build shines is going cover to cover from here to here, constantly getting tactical advance procced and utilizing robust. Honestly, during this patch and during 1.4, it seems like the content has actually gotten easier, significantly easier. Anyone that could beat, challenging undergrounds with 5 directives before can 100% do it now, and easier. It's not going to be even as difficult as it was before to do. Let's search this, and yeah, you're going to be able to shred through. This isn't a challenging. Again, there is harder content to do, but the build performs. The only thing holding it back is user error, which unfortunately I have a lot of. I make a lot of mistakes when I'm going through. Tactically, I'm new to PC. So let's see. If we do tactical advance, we get up here. Once we're up here, we have increased damage. See, my gun skill is lacking. But once you land those headshots, it's a really, really quick kill. That's even without pulse active. Let's see how far we can go. Let's go all the way up here, and then we'll turn on the guy behind us after we kill this Joker, and then we turn on him. And as you can see, even though I was losing health, I was able to just kill him, and then suddenly I had a large chunk of health. Let's see. Shoot me a couple times. Let me get in cover so you can't instantly kill me. Proc all of my extra mitigation. You can stagger him quite easily, get him to drop his grenade on himself. Anyways, the build performs quite well, and it's a really good change of pace because I've been doing a lot of PvP content specifically, and people have asked me to do some PvE stuff. So this is my answer to that. Hopefully it's got some good content for you. Hopefully the theory craft is sound and people will get some good use out of it, and hopefully it allows you to get some better gear, especially when patch 1.4 drops. Patch 1.4 has made it so that these attributes, enemy armor damage, damage to elites, predatory, the talent, are much better than they ever were previously in 1.3. So I foresee 1.4 making it viable for a lot more people to get a lot more gear a lot faster. And despite the fact that a lot of people are now kind of doing a 180 pivot and they're turning back and saying, no, I don't like patch 1.4. I'm not really a fan of, maybe the world tier brackets or something like that. People are starting to backpedal and not be such a fan of the changes, which is a little bit confusing to me considering that I am still a tremendous fan of the changes. I think that they're fantastic. As you can see, I'm eating some damage. All I have to do is kill one guy, and I didn't even get the kill because his grenade did. But there, get a kill, back to full health, regenerating for 20 seconds. And I can keep just bouncing around and killing and regenerating. It's a vampire build, it's a life drain build, it's a really, really solid thing. And I foresee this kind of build getting a lot of use in PvE. And not everyone going, 4-piece sentry with an M1A anymore, because that's just not going to work. Anyways, it's going to drag on if I keep going. I'm going to call it there. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully there's some good information here. And I hope that everyone starts to utilize different mechanics to progress through PvE content and enjoys patch 1.4 on the PTS. And then when it finally launches, as much as I have, please check out the links below. We have an amazing Discord channel. We have a really vibrant Facebook community. There's a lot of different ways to connect with Upper Echelon, to join, to group up, and to get more out of the division in particular. We are expanding to more games. If you want to support, there's links for that too. There's Patreon, Game Wisp, etc. So thank you so much again. And as always, guys, have a nice day.